Former vegans who went back to eating meat. What changed? Turns out it re-triggered my eating disorder. Saying no to food, having to meticulously check ingredients, etc., eating differently in social settings without any cause for alarm. My dad retired and got bored, so he started farming or whatever and started raising a couple cows, a few pigs, chickens, etc. for food, and gave me and my adult siblings some. I never had a moral problem with killing and eating animals. I just didn't like a lot of what I saw in the meat industry. There's some dissonance to the fact that I'm okay with eating an animal as long as it's treated decently while alive, but I can live that. A friend of mine was, and is now again, vegan. It was fucking up her pregnancy, so she went back to chicken, beef, and fish through breastfeeding, then went back to a vegan diet. Allergies to too many different beans and legumes. I didn't used to be allergic/intolerant to them, but maybe it was just so low level that I didn't notice, and enough years of those made my reactions worse. Was vegan shortly after recovering from ED. Realized it was just an easier justification to cut out fear foods. Then started traveling more and decided I didn't want to deprive myself of cultural experiences, and it's more convenient. I still primarily eat plant-based, but I won't turn down a good dish with animal products. Cheese. Missed a real cheese pizza. I had sushi again after a long time and couldn't go back. My last girlfriend had a daughter who was college-aged when we met. Her daughter ended up going vegan for a little while. Her rationale was that she just didn't want meat for some time, several years. But then she started craving it again, so she started eating it again, which, honestly, is about the most based vegan take I've ever heard. She said if her body was telling her it wanted this item so much, it must have something she instinctively needed for her health, and so it made sense to her. Which, hey, fair enough. I was vegan for 3 years, and it never got any easier. I thought eventually the cravings would stop. Eventually I wouldn't want cheese, meat, etc. anymore. But no, the cravings remained constant. There was constant willpower needed to say no to the cheese plate sitting in front of me, or that box of donuts over there. Then COVID happened. I got furloughed from my job, and it felt like the world was ending, and I was like, fuck it, I need and deserve some cheese. Some ice cream. Weirdly, a tuna sandwich. So then I was pescatarian for a while, but eventually that went out the window too. And now here we are, 4 years later, and I still can't imagine mustering the mentally energy to cut out those things again. I tried it for 6 months to improve my health, and it totally backfired, including allergic reactions, acute eczema, and GI issues. It turns out that I have a severe histamine intolerance, and also a fermentable saccharide, FODMAP, intolerance due to histamine again. This unfortunately includes a lot of common fruits and vegetables, plus many nuts, grains, and beans due to aflatoxin. Even on an omnivore diet, the options that are safe for me are limited. There's no way I can make a vegan diet work. I literally just cannot digest it, and there is no way to fix that. Veganism is not safe for everyone. If you're like me, it's a disaster. I'm never doing that again. I had severe iron deficiency anemia for undiagnosed medical reasons. Passed out at my job at the hospital, and my hemoglobin was 5.8. While I was waiting for surgery, I ate a lot of meat and had iron infusions so I could breathe normally and not have palpitations and, function. Now I'm 95% veggie. I don't buy or prepare meat anymore, but I'm not going to melt down if someone serves me a cheeseburger. I've been on a vegan diet since I was 15. I'll be 45 later this year. My diet hasn't changed, but I did start wearing leather a few years ago. At first it was difficult since I went so long wearing only textile and synthetic materials, but I just saw too much waste with synthetic materials. They wouldn't last, and I was getting new shoes/boots every 3 to 6 months. I didn't think that was ecologically responsible. I've since started wearing leather boots that are lasting 3+ years and can be resold. I still buy synthetic materials when there are quality alternatives. Not me, but a family member used veganism as a cover for anorexia. They went to therapy and are doing a lot better. I was vegan for almost a decade, but I couldn't stay on top of my nutrient deficiencies with supplements alone. Since adding eggs, fish, and chicken back into my diet, my numbers are finally where they should be. I finally have energy, and I've reversed the hair loss I experienced in my early 20s. I wish I didn't need to eat animal products, but I've learned to accept that my body needs it. I try to source my food as ethically as possible, but that can be tough. Health issues or dietary needs necessitated the change back to meat. I was hungry. I also lost a lot of weight. To get what you need on a vegan diet, you have to eat quite a lot of bulky foods full of fiber, and I just can't. I'd feel full, but somehow never satisfied. Vegetarian here. I have known a few who tried or were, and then went back. I knew a woman who worked at a health food store and was vegetarian for 3 years. She basically asked the question, "Why am I sick all the time?" She hadn't been that way before. She began to eat a roast beef sandwich for lunch every day and is now fine. Health improved. I have known of a few people with similar but less dramatic stories. Typically, their body just didn't feel right, had odd pains, or whatever. As for me, once I made sure I was getting enough essential fatty acids, my body works very well as a vegetarian. Almost 30 years now. It's not for everyone. I was vegetarian for 11 years until at 26 when I went to Cuba on a Spanish immersion and knew it would be difficult to maintain a vegetarian diet in a foreign country where my host would be cooking my meals, so I decided to just go with it out of respect. Had a lot of ham and cheese sandwiches for breakfast that summer. Then I started eating fish pretty regularly and my hair and nails got a lot stronger. I had always been anemic on a vegetarian diet. A friend of mine who practices Chinese medicine told me a vegetarian diet was not good for people with my blood type, O+. Once I went back to eating all kinds of animal protein, a bunch of health issues cleared up, so I stuck with it. My GP did my blood work, came in the room and said, "You're literally dying. Your labs were perfect before. What did you do?" IDK. I guess I'm one of the people who can't extract nutrients from plants very well according to her. Switched back to meat and been fine ever since. I would love to be vegan for ethics, but I just can't function on it. I got pancreatitis from being diabetic. Turns out a lot of vegan food is high in carbs. Gained 30 pounds when I went vegan because I was always hungry. Now I mostly stick to a low-carb diet and my sugar levels are under control, and I lost most of the weight I gained. Pancreatitis was the worst pain I've ever experienced. I realized I had an eating disorder. My life felt out of control, and I felt more in control by restricting my diet. I was vegan for over 10 years. Poverty necessitated eating free and cheap non-vegan food for a couple years. Then diagnosis of diabetes meant no more legumes or pasta or rice or other carby food. Meat has no carbs, so that's what I eat now, along with low-carb veggies, eggs, and dairy. I'm type 1 diabetic and just couldn't get enough protein. My sugars were way low and my spikes were way high. I'm still a vegetarian and could never go back to eating meat. But I took up dairy again because vegan alternatives to cheese and chocolate were just depressing. The vegan cheese, in particular, tasted like grated plastic. Even milk alternatives to make a cup of tea was a nightmare. I tried telling myself that I'd get used to it, but going for the rest of my life on food I had to convince myself to get used to is not worth it. I'm still a vegetarian and that'll do. Related answer. I was vegan for a few years and went back to vegetarian, eggs mostly. I'm poor, and it took too much time, money, and effort to ensure that I was eating enough protein and getting all necessary nutrients with purely vegan options. It was also hard to be strictly vegan when going to other people's houses or going out to restaurants with other people, since the area where I live barely has vegetarian options, let alone vegan. I basically switched to the mindset of something is better than nothing, and I'd say my diet is 90% vegan and 10% vegetarian these days. Was vegan for 3 years. Worked a tough construction job with long hours. I couldn't really get enough calories and nutrition in. And this time I also got whooping cough and shingles in a short space of time, at 25. But that could be unrelated. I think I lost some muscle mass too. I started dreaming of eating chicken and took this as a sign. Now eat everything, especially chicken and eggs. Still work a manual job, BJJ 6 hours a week, and feel stronger and better. I also think that a lot of vegan products aren't half as good or eco-friendly as they're made out to be. I'm in the UK and our meat standards are much higher than some of the US factory farming you see. I went vegan when going through a long-term health issue, and it seemed to really help. I reincorporated cheese and eggs after 2 years because I wanted to. Still not much of meat eater and no red meat, but I might die with a block of cheese in my hand. Don't have the money to pick and choose anymore. I was vegetarian for years, then suddenly my iron and hemoglobin levels were dropping. I was taking iron supplements, and it was still worsening. My PCP said I just needed more iron intake still. I was desperate, so I started eating meat again. Turned out I had cancer, that was the cause, and chemo was the cure. I started lifting weights seriously and couldn't recover well enough on a vegan diet. There are lots of people who are elite athletes and bodybuilders who are vegan. It's not like it can't be done. I just wasn't knowledgeable or creative enough about how to do it at the time. And it was many, many years ago when there were fewer options on the market. My eating disorder made it harder for me to keep eating plant-based due to restrictions and fear of carbs. I still eat 80% plant-based, but now I eat animals again. I try to avoid though when I can. I consider myself now flexitarian. I moved to a place where a vegan lifestyle was impossible. No grocery stores carried even tofu, not even Walmart. Made me realize how much of a sign of privilege being vegan was. If God didn't want us to eat animals, why did he make them out of meat? Serious iron deficiency plus problems with iron supplements. I found that my body wasn't feeling its best on a vegan diet. I missed certain foods and felt like I needed more variety in my meals. After reintroducing meat, I felt more satisfied and my energy levels improved. Not vegan, but was vegetarian for 15 years from like 25 years old to 40. Got fairly chubby, ended up eating way more carbs. At 40 I went keto, and then intermittent fasting to get back into slightly better shape, and found it was just so much easier with meat as an option. I was in a car accident and couldn't regain the muscle I lost during recovery. I was in a car with somebody eating a Burger King Tender Crisp sandwich, the good ones from when they first started making them, and the smell was so good that I had to try a bite. It tasted so good that we drove back through and bought one for myself. I stopped being vegan that day. I recovered from my eating disorder. Got sick because of it. Ended up with pancreatitis and other issues caused by vitamin deficiency. I was taking vitamin supplements, but apparently I don't absorb them well. It was easier just to eat meat instead of getting B12 injections and other treatments for the rest of my life. Personally, I found out that I have very particular diet requirements, and most of the foods carrying me through veganism, avocado, wheat, onion, tomato to name a few, were causing one type of reaction or another. Ultimately, eating meat fills in a lot of my daily vitamin requirements without having to get too creative.